All right, welcome to Texans Unfiltered. Can y'all hear me out there? Messing around with a different mic. Can y'all hear me? Am I coming through? Y'all can hear me. Awesome. So tonight it's just me. That's good news. Having to pull out the old mic again. I might have messed up. I'm not sure what happened. We did have a guest host that I was extremely excited about tonight, but I didn't follow up. I thought I had this little app that did it for me. So maybe it didn't go through, maybe he didn't get it. I'm not entirely sure what happened there, and oh well, it is what it is. But I do appreciate every single one of y'all always showing up every week. So I figured I'd come on, at least talk with chat, maybe answer some questions, just kind of see how everybody's feeling. If we're feeling a little bit better about the draft, or if we are feeling a little bit worse about the draft, just you know, seeing where we're at. Right now, Tony Yayo feel great about that NC trading the 2022 fourth rounder. I mean, I we don't have access to his board. I think that it was a bad move in a vacuum, to tell you the truth. I'm not exactly over the moon about it, but in a vacuum, what can you do? Yeah, I need to reach out to Rivers. I'm sure if I give him more than 5 minutes, he probably would come on, but I we've had him on several times in the past. Let's see. Just throw it out on Twitter, see if anyone wants to come on. You know what? If multiple people respond, I'll bring multiple people on. We'll do what we can. I think that they did the best that they could have done. Slick Will, I don't disagree with you at all on that. I'm not gonna get too worked up about. I'm not gonna get too worked up about it right now because they just the Texans really didn't give Nick Casario like that fair of a deal. Not only was it I mean, it's not all the Texans' fault. Not only did he not have a first or a second round pick, like we all know that. I mean, that's for Tunsil. That is what it is. But with everything else, like this year, he didn't have his scouting department. He is the new GM. All the other craziness. I'm sure that he's probably spent more time dealing with Deshaun stuff than they've admitted. Even though he's been very, very dismissive during the press conferences, I think that between Bill O'Brien and Deshaun and everything, like dudes have had a full plate, a burning house. Probably just not the best. Here, I got somebody willing to come on. Tony Yayo. Yeah, that he was the best guy. Rivers was the absolute best guy on the Athletic for the Texans. Nothing, nothing against the other guy. I don't want to say his name because I don't want to get accused of trashing him, and I'm not looking to do that. But Rivers breakdowns, he actually would do breakdowns that were Texans focused, not just opinion pieces, not just articles. Like he brought the film out and he would do the film study, and he still does that on his website. Like definitely, if you don't know who Rivers McCown is, you should be following him on Twitter. You should be reading his his articles, his stuff, his content, whatever he puts out. He does a great job of just breaking everything down and making it accessible to a general audience. Hey, Otto.
Hello, hello. Hey, how's it going, John?
I am doing good. You are really quiet. That
Oh,
might be
I'm
on
really
my end.
quiet. Oh, I just got on. I'm sorry. How's it going tonight?
It's going well. Let's see.
So have you tracked any of this information about Deshaun Watson possibly being linked to the Eagles?
Hold on 1 second for me.
All right.
You hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I had a little bit of a glitch. Let's see. With Deshaun going to the Eagles, I mean, at this point, there's nothing concrete about anything. It's the Eagles actually will have a package next year that can offer him.
Correct.
So it's one of those processes of elimination. Like, what teams actually have the assets to go and get him? Now, from what we've kind of been told, Deshaun's not high on the Eagles. It sounds almost like Deshaun's trying to force himself into Miami. Between Miami having the capability to bring him on
Yeah.
and just the situation that he wants, like, yeah, that's what seems to be going on.
Well, in my opinion, I don't think Caserio is going to keep him in the conference. It's something I don't see him going down the road and want to face Deshaun in the playoffs potentially. Could be, I mean, if Deshaun gets on Miami, they're a good team as is. Deshaun probably would put them over the top. So
Yeah.
I'm saying the Eagles because, one, there's already a link with Quincy Avery, right? They're not
Correct.
completely sold on Jalen Hurts. And historically, the Eagles are a low IQ football team, meaning they are willing to take high risk to get what they want.
That is true.
Jeff Lurie, the owner, is in a situation where he's dealing with the fans post Super Bowl to where, you know, people are calling for his head, as well as the GM, Howie Roseman, who, what everyone else is forgetting about, has said he wants Philadelphia to be a quarterback factory. Now, personally, for me, there's not one player on the Eagles that interests me as a Texans fan. Just take draft picks. Not one player on that current roster is worth it, in my opinion.
No, I actually do not disagree with that at one point. It's one of the funny things about Philadelphia is how quickly like the mighty has fallen. Like,
Correct.
they have absolutely nosedived since their Super Bowl.
It's a Super Bowl hangover, and if I'm not mistaken, Orlando Scandrick went on, what was it, ESPN or First Take or something like that, and said there's like bad juju in that locker room. They're all stuck on the Super Bowl hangover. But like I said, they that team, which I will give them credit, they have done whatever it takes to put a good team year in, year out. Now, whether that team was good or not that year, we can debate that to kingdom come. But look at that, look at the year of the super team, right? With Vince Young and all them, when they stacked all that talent and still fell short. I think the Eagles are desperate enough where they will give Nick Caserio and the Texans what they want and then some. Maybe throw in Miles Sanders as a kicker.
But does anybody even want Miles Sanders? Like, that's
he's underutilized in Philly at this moment. I mean,
he's also under. I think it would be more likely that go after Dallas Goedert. Like, he's the one name possibly.
Yeah.
And if you look at Nick Caserio, he looks to be addicted to linebackers and tight ends. Like, can't have enough of them. So
yeah, I mean, I would probably, I forgot about Dallas Goedert. So Dallas Goedert and Miles Sanders, I would probably add to the list of players I would ask for. I'm not asking for Lane Johnson because you have Laramie and you have Titus, right? So you don't need tackles. Brandon Brooks isn't returning, plus Who wants to deal with his pregame ritual where he might not even play? Something might happen with him, His what was it? IBS or anxiety he had. And that's not me trying to joke about him, but I know he's got some issues.
Yeah, definitely.
But
No, I mean Brooks, and then just with his history here on top of that, like
correct.
absolutely not worth it. Like if it's going to be a trade with the Eagles, it has to be entirely draft picks. I don't. They could make some noise because I think that they are that team that if the Texans wanted to wait, they would go overboard with the amount of picks they would offer. Like they would drive the price up. But
Yeah.
this rumor that he wants 2 defensive players, like there's not 2 defensive players on the Eagles that are worth trading for.
No, and for anyone that's like, jumping up and down, Fletcher Cox is not the player that people think he is. Ever since he got paid, he's been one of those guys that's just been hot dogging.
And I mean, he's a 10-year vet, but if we trade Deshaun, we're not going to be competitive the following year. It's a 2 to 3 year rebuild at absolute best. So why would you trade for Fletcher Cox, who's already a 10-year vet, who 2 to 3 years from now there's a good chance that he's out of the league. And
Correct.
I mean,
correct.
And I don't mean that to disrespect him. He's a fine player, but NFL players just don't last after 30.
Correct. And he's, like I said, since he's gotten paid, I mean, he seems like very stale. You don't hear about him as that disruptor on the interior of the defensive line, pre-payday.
Right. And with him kind of dropping off, their entire defense has dropped off. Now he is the type of player that can absolutely carry a defense when he's on his game, but he's not been that.
Well,
he's absolutely not been that. And it's like, and sorry, I don't really want to get too much into him because we're in kind of in agreement. He's like, we're not here to trash the Eagles. Like we don't give 2 shits about the Eagles roster, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, so, part of me is, rooting for Carson Wentz to tear it up in Indy just to secure a first-round pick, if that's potentially who they're going to deal with in the trade. But part of me wants Carson Wentz to do bad because now he's an Indianapolis Colt.
Yeah, I'm sure I've said it before, but my wife is an NDSU, or her family is like all big into them. So I've had to spend several years rooting for Carson Wentz, and he seems fine. Like he seems like he's a good guy or whatnot. But
well, I'll tell you what, I live here in Philly, right? So I'm always hearing Philly.
Oh, no joke.
Nobody ever says anything good about Carson Wentz. Everything I've heard is he's a problematic guy. Like, apparently, this isn't me like quoting any source or nothing, but from what I've heard was like he's the reason why Nick Foles isn't in Philly anymore. They wanted to extend him, but something happened with Carson Wentz and his ego and all that good jazz.
I don't know. I mean, from the NDSU connections, I've known people that have actually known Carson Wentz.
Sure.
Granted, it's all telephone, and I hate to say it, but Philadelphia, their sports environment's pretty damn toxic.
Well, yeah, and just remember, just like Deshaun, not everything is what you see for face value either. You could
that
think
is true.
One way, and then lo and behold, it was a completely other way.
That is very, very true.
Carson Wentz was a good quarterback, but when the team really needed, and I got to throw his injury history in there, when the team really needed him, he wasn't available.
Yeah. No, he's one of those guys, when you look at what he kind of got away with, he was just he was one of those that kind of lucked out in a lot, and it wasn't sustainable.
Sure.
And you thought that he would kind of improve his accuracy, and he would just improve as a quarterback, but it almost seemed like he kind of plateaued after the ACL. And
well, I will say this, in my opinion, and I feel it's 100% bona fide fact that when quarterbacks transition from college to the pros, they are who they are. rarely do quarterbacks improve. There's a few anomalies. I'll give you a few off the top of my head. Will be Drew Brees and Josh Allen is on the upward trend. That's just two off the top of my head. But very rarely do quarterbacks make a great leap and turn into like a superstar. I was just talking to a buddy of mine. He was sending me all this Cam Newton stuff. And I'm like, with him, Tim Tebow, and Johnny Manziel, how anyone ever thought that they were first-round quarterbacks should be fired and banned from football for life.
I mean, there's this idea that if you win in college, like I agree. Like they all seem like obvious bust at the time. But I can almost sympathize with the idea that if they win, you think they're going to win. So
yeah, you think that winning is like a DNA thing and it'll carry with them. However, well, I believe it was you or it was Ari was talking about it, and you guys were talking about quarterback and the lack of first round success. And from what I've seen is scouts and coaches get enamored with traits. Tebow, right. Manziel, and Cam Newton specifically, passing was one of the last things scouts and anyone ever mentioned about them. It was always size, athleticism, ability with their legs. Passing ability was way down on the scale. And I think that's where a lot of scouts and coaches get wrong, because they see these little traits. Even we can say Jamarcus Russell with his big cannon, right? They see that one trait and everything else, and they say, I can fix that. And then they get stuck, and then they take that guy.
Well, here's the thing. Drafting quarterbacks and scouting quarterbacks, essentially the point that I've been trying to make, the whole trade Deshaun thing, is it's luck. Like, you luck into a good quarterback.
It's luck, but it's luck, but part of it's not. Because I'm a weirdo, I did a study all the way back to the year 2000 of first-round quarterbacks, right?
Yep.
The one important trait I found about all these, and anyone that wants to argue with me, find me on Twitter, right? Because completion percentage is the biggest storyteller, right? In today's NFL, since the year 2000, you need at least 64% completion percent in college. Anything below that, you're no good. My brain would automatically shut off. I don't care how big of an arm you have, how athletic
I believe the only
are.
player that's broken that is Josh Allen.
Josh Allen is on an upward trend. I don't want to say it yet because I like patterns. I like to see, multiple years, not once or twice. Drew Brees is one of the few that made a leap. And when I mean a leap, most quarterbacks, when they get to the NFL, their completion percentage only jumps up or moves down 2%. If anyone doesn't believe me, go on, what's it? One of those NFL statistics sites and look at completion percentage. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Look at every first-round quarterback since the year 2000, because that league average was going around 58% completion, but it was a completely different game, more run-heavy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is where it gets interesting, because when you start seeing these quarterbacks' completion percentage, and what I do is I looked at every single year in college, and then I just took the average of them in the pros. And you could almost equate their completion percentage to their win-loss record as a pro.
Really?
I'm telling you, it's crazy. I don't have the notebook anymore. I had it like every first-round quarterback. The fact that someone drafted Kyle Bowler in the first round, which I think was maybe 2003, Baltimore might have taken him, or a year or two prior. Kyle Bowler was a 47% passer. He wouldn't have even been a good quarterback in the 90s to take in the first round. But yeah, completion percentage, it correlates directly to winning percentage. So for me, and like I said, this is why quarterback coaches, head coaches and scouts get it wrong because they see these little traits. If anything below 64%, my brain shuts off. And then that's when you start moving down the line. Next, I would have to say you want to look at decision making.
Well, you also want to, when you, so when Deshaun got hurt a couple of years back, when he tore his ACL, me and
Correct.
James had a fun exercise, and I'm completely with you. The benchmark that I was looking at was 65%. Like, what quarterbacks were out there that had a winning record in college, had 65% completion percentage, had an average depth of target of 6 yards. So they weren't just throwing little pop bubble screens, and went out there and found like what quarterbacks would be a good backup that we can build up to back up Deshaun. Like, that was the whole point. Like, who's out there? Who can we poach off a practice squad? And what was fun about that is the guy that I eventually settled on was Taylor Heineke. Like, there's an episode, and up until, I mean, that playoff game was a little bit fun for me because I kind of pointed that out. But Taylor Heineke actually hit all those things so that he would be a decent backup quarterback. So just interesting fun fact, because your research on that, like, I completely agree with it. I think you nailed it. Like,
and you
65% with a depth of target, like, those two things will tell you if they can play in the NFL.
And that might be fair, only because in today's NFL, the elite quarterbacks are starting to creep into the 70s. Like, we're seeing, I think in the last year or two, someone hit 72 and 73, and it might have been Breeze and Mahomes, I want to say. But
let's see.
Back to, Deshaun and quarterback play. Right now.
So just for fun reference, before we move on from that, I want to point out that Deshaun had a 67% completion rate with an average yard per attempt of 7.9. Davis Mills, 65.5 with an average depth at 7.9. So both around 8 yards. So that's not bad.
That somewhat should give everyone a little bit more hope. I'm not saying Davis Mills is the answer. I'd like him to be. However, I prefer that Keaton Slovis kid from USC next year.
Okay.
But let's not jump ahead to that year. Back to Deshaun. What I think his biggest issue as a quarterback right now, he doesn't know how to command the field. Now, what do I mean by he doesn't know how to command the field? He knows that, when he, had Will Fuller and Hop and all them, he could just launch the ball downfield and score a touchdown, right? Now, in games where he's gone full air raid like that, he's matched up against guys like Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, Nick Foles when he was on the Eagles. And what were they doing? They have clock awareness. They know where they're at on the field. They know how to work the field. And they had better defenses than Deshaun had as well. So when you have a bad defense, you got to be a little bit more aware. You got to know how to work the field and not just say, while it does look good if you could throw a 70-yard bomb to Will Fuller, sure, that's great. But then when you got a guy like a Patrick Mahomes or a Russell Wilson that normally are backed up by a good defense, you're going to run into problems.
Yeah. No, I'm in agreement on that as well. My knock on Deshaun is part of the reason that he was able to elevate his game this year is because we were always trailing. When defenses are passive, even zone defense does not matter. When they're not attacking him, he can absolutely shred them. Sure. Now, when they're attacking defenses and they're mixing up their blitz, now, which is crazy because he actually had one of the highest QBRs while being blitzed, but that's when the offense would turtle. And I don't know if that was entirely on Deshaun or if that was on the play calling. But attacking defenses would get to him.
If I could, kind of hijack for a minute, QBR is a made up stat in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's to make guys like your Lamar Jacksons and your Baker Mayfields trick you into thinking that they're better than they really are. Because they combine everything they do into quarter QBR.
Correct. And it's also part of that is I believe he has to actually throw the ball. If he doesn't throw the ball, it doesn't really count against him.
Correct. Now, I grew up, it came down to, and it was sort of a made up number too. What was it? Passer rating.
Yep.
And if you were perfect, it was something weird like 158.3 or something. I don't know how they got that number. But yeah. But quarterback, just to jump back, you know, and I've said it once and I'll say it again. I've probably said it a million times. Quarterbacks are who they are by the time they get to the pros. And listen, I'm not trying to pick on anyone, but if you look at all of Quincy Avery's quarterbacks prior to this year, I don't know if he's still working with Lance and Fields and all them because I think they're actually going to be successful. Look at all those quarterbacks. Dwayne Haskins is the one that shocked me the most because he fell into a good quarterback category. But if you look at the rest of that group, your Ben DiNucci, your Josh Dobbs, who else are you working with? Jalen Hurts. They're all perennial bad quarterbacks.
Well, I mean, it's still kind of early to call that on Jalen Hurts. I mean, he did better than Carson Wentz did last year, which, I mean, granted, isn't saying a whole lot in Philadelphia. Obviously doesn't seem old on him. And I think that Quincy Avery, the one that'll be, I think what'll be his absolute deal maker will be Trey Lance. Because he is so raw. And granted, he absolutely destroyed competition at North Dakota State.
Sure.
But, I mean, you can't say he is who he is because at the level of competition, that's like going into single A baseball versus guys that have played in triple A.
Well, I tell you what. You've seen guys in that situation where they become the starter and they're from a small school. We've seen it with Carson Wentz, who went to the same school, if I'm not mistaken, right? We've seen what he's done. And we've seen Joe Flacco, who was, what, Division II, Division III? Killing it.
Yeah, Delaware, whatever Delaware
right?
is.
Those guys never really set the world on fire, but they did just enough. When you get a quarterback that can just do enough, that's when you have to bring in talent around them.
Right. And what I'm saying about Trey Lance, if he comes in there and just does enough, then
that's all he has to do.
Well, that's a bust for what they gave up for him. And because, I mean, San Francisco overpaid or paid a lot. I don't want to necessarily say overpaid. It depends on what he turns into. And I would also put that on Quincy Avery. Can you develop Trey Lance, who has all the physical ability in the world? He's at it. He's going to be in an offense that's going to put him in a good spot. Like Shanahan's going to put him in a position where he can succeed once he grasps the offense.
Absolutely.
So if Trey Lance can be one of the top quarterbacks in the league, then I think that Quincy Avery gets a little bit of credit for him. Whereas Deshaun Watson, when you go back and you look at it and you look at his stats from college, you look at things like completion percentage, you look at all the stats that goes into it, like the winner, like the Bill Parcells, like he had all those. Like Deshaun Watson falling was kind of a joke. Like if you really look back at it.
So what I want to ask then is, you know, does Deshaun fall in my category of most quarterbacks are who they are when they get to the league?
Yes, he definitely does. I mean, he played with, I mean, look what he did against Alabama. I hate to say it as a Gamecock, but what Deshaun Watson did against Alabama twice, including winning the national championship. And those were some gutsy games that Clemson doesn't win. Clemson doesn't win that national championship with Trevor Lawrence as the quarterback. I will say that. If you if you watch that tape, like that defense was so good. That was Deshaun.
That's a good thing I know about Deshaun is he's got a somewhat decent clock in his head to where once he snaps the ball, he knows how to at least make one or two reads. And then if he's got to go, he knows he's got to go.
Yeah. And Deshaun plays better when he's angry. Like he's got to be in that situation. When he's in that situation, that's when he plays the best. Like when the Texans almost will go on those winning streaks 2 years ago when they would win multiple games in a row, that's where he would start to fall off a little bit. Like he'd get maybe a little complacent. He's got to always have that fire burning, and when he does, that's when he can be like a top tier. He can be a top tier quarterback, and he's shown it. When he
He's
gets
shown
complacent,
flashes. I'm not sold on the whole Michael Jordan of football,
No.
whatever Dabo's deemed him. You see glimmers of it, like the light bulb's there, it's flickering, but it's not fully bright yet.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I still think that he's a top 3 quarterback in the league right now.
Really?
Michael Jordan transcendent? No. He still has that as a ceiling, but I still consider him a top 3 quarterback.
Now, is he third place or higher on yours?
He's third place. He's behind Mahomes and Rodgers.
Better? You're saying he's better than Wilson and better than handsome Tom Brady?
Yes, better than Brady because Brady's just aged out of it.
Okay.
Granted, I wouldn't say the Bucs win the Super Bowl without Brady, but that's not Brady's role anymore to be a top tier quarterback. Russell, that you know what? That's actually where it does get a little bit more complicated because I like Russell Wilson.
I would say Russell by a hair only because he has what I previously stated Deshaun doesn't have. He doesn't have that field general command ability to where Russell does.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Russell's got his Super Bowl. He's got his MVP. Like, he's done it all. But he fell off a cliff this past year. And I don't know if that's on Schottenheimer, the play caller, or if that's on Russell Wilson. But they came out and remember at the beginning of the year, everybody's like, let Russell cook. And then about halfway through the season, it's like, what happened? Did they rely too much on him and he could no longer carry the offense? Whereas Deshaun carried our offense the entire year. We had no running game.
Correct.
And granted, we didn't win anything, but everything that we did and the fact that we were even in games was because of Deshaun.
Well,
so I would say the supporting cast even currently is better around Russell Wilson, considerably better than what we had last year.
I would say the Texans have a better offensive line.
We have better tackles, but the interior of our offensive line last year played so badly. This year going forward, they will. But this past year, they were bad.
Well, the problem was, towards what, the middle of the season, they're pulling Max Sharping out and putting in Calamente and moving around. That's no good. But so I was watching the show that James and Sarge and all of them did last week, and they were mentioning Jadeveon Clowney, and they were mentioning how he's a great player, right? Best comp I could ever give to Clowney was Justin Tuck 2.0. Okay in the pass, solid in the pass, dominant versus the run. However, to continue off of that, that's one thing that people never gave Bill O'Brien credit for is when he told a player, pardon my French, they weren't shit. He was never wrong.
Well, O'Brien wanted to pay Clowney.
I'm sure he did. But when they moved on from him, though, that just shows what the team thinks overall about that player. But if you look at every player that was exiled by Bill O'Brien, they didn't do nothing anywhere else. Look at Dwayne. No one's talking about him as a top flight left tackle anymore, correct?
They still are.
Top 10?
Yeah, he's still he's still in that conversation. He's on the older side, but he's still considered a top 10.
I won't consider him top 10. Maybe 10 to 15 if we want to get goofy with it. But in my opinion, Dwayne Brown hasn't been shit. Andre Johnson, he told Andre Johnson, what? You're 40 balls a year. How many balls did he catch when he went to, what was it, Tennessee, then Indy?
He told him 60, he caught 40.
Yeah, 41. I think it was 41. No. Arian ends up in Miami, ends up walking away from football in the middle of it. Clowney, what do the Texans and Seattle Seahawks have in common? They're pass rush needy teams. They both, not just the Texans, Seattle as well, and they're just as pass rusher needy as the Texans. Let him go as well.
You see, here's the thing about Clowney, and I'm a Clowney apologist. So just to forewarn you, I am. Clowney is not a pass rusher.
Correct.
If you understand that about Clowney, then you can kind of appreciate the type of player that he is. Now, he is so athletic that he can contribute as a pass rusher, but that should never be his primary job. He was essentially an outside linebacker, defensive end that you could spin a 3-4 to a 4-3 instantly. Who was the guy that I'm thinking of that used to be on the Patriots when they first made their run? Why can't I think of his name?
Willie
but
McGinnis?
He's the actual, not McGinnis. It was the defensive end that would also play outside linebacker. Essentially what Clowney was doing. Clowney was that guy 2.0.
Are you thinking of
run
a daily
stuffer? No. Let's see. 90. What was the 2001 Patriots roster? I'm going to figure out this guy's name.
It wasn't Seymour. Not Teddy Bruschi.
Who am I thinking of?
Vrabel?
No. Maybe it wasn't 2001. I can't remember. That was a long time ago. I wasn't old enough.
Was it Adalius Thomas? Because he was that guy when he was in Baltimore, and then he went to New England. He was they moved. Baltimore even had him playing safety a couple plays.
I think it's Willie McGinnis that I'm making the comparison with.
It could be. They played the elephant position or whatever they called it.
Granted, you know what? I haven't talked about. We haven't. Maybe Seymour. Shoot, we haven't talked about Clowney in 2 years. But essentially, my point is if you looked at him as that guy that you could spin your defense, like you could go from a 4-3 to a 3-4, you could go from gap control to attacking with essentially the same personnel by putting that guy's hand in the dirt, and then you could have him drop back, still set the edge, not really get much in coverage, but enough to fake it. That's what Clowney was, a better pass rushing version of that. But his job in that to do that wasn't to pass rush. Occasionally they would set him up and they would give him a gap to go crash. But most of the time it was setting the edge, making sure that nobody could escape and maintaining that line of scrimmage. And that's what he actually excelled at.
Yeah,
which led to him being a great run defender. And it let other people get really high pass rushing numbers. Now, we've had the argument that Clowney was used that way here in Houston when they got the best out of him. But we also had the unique situation of having JJ Watt, who they always, and as they should, JJ Watt earned this right. He was so productive that they should create a new position for him. But he threw everybody else's responsibilities off.
Correct.
That's what made JJ Watt tricky. Like, you couldn't play a 4-3 or a 3-4 with JJ because he made everything work a lot differently. And some of it was in a positive manner. He would automatically get two guys double teaming him automatically. So he didn't really get to attack a gap or maintain gap control, but you did have to have somebody behind him cleaning up his mess if he was too aggressive.
Yeah, and
So
he's just a stat chaser, in my opinion.
yeah,
I think he's selfish.
which I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's the same in basketball. Scorers are supposed to be a little bit selfish. Quarterbacks are
Well,
supposed to be a little bit selfish when
it,
you need them to score
it's
points.
it,
Pass rushers should be, and he was one of the most successful pass rushers ever. He should be selfish. That's what he was good at.
but he
But it
did get
changes the defense.
correct, and it got to the point to where I think after his first injury, it started reflecting on the team poorly. Because I don't know, was it the first year when he lost significant time? Was that the year that Clowney had like 9.5 sacks that season?
Yeah, that was when
And he,
Merciless and Clowney, and we almost beat the Patriots with Brock
yes,
Osweiler as our
Clowney was
quarterback.
one
So
man wrecking crew. And the defense
correct.
as a whole was not skipping a beat. I think if
There,
JJ was healthy and in that game, I think the wheels fall off a lot sooner.
yeah, that is a point
And
that is absolutely fair, and I probably agree with
and
that
when
defense doesn't evolve into that being with JJ there. Like at that point, that's when JJ should have actually been traded, and you build the defense around those players.
correct,
Now, JJ for the past 2 years, though, there was no players to build around other than him.
but
So
how much of his game? See that's the thing. He wasn't adjusting his game though either, because at that point you knew Benardrick McKinney wasn't known as like a speedy linebacker. To have to rely on a guy like that who's not known for his speed to have to clean up behind you, that's where it starts falling off.
yeah,
And I
there
remember
was some interesting roster decisions that were made when you were supposed to be building a defense around JJ Watt. I will absolutely agree with that, especially with his style of play. And, he was the only guy that we had that could rush the passer. So,
and
no,
I
that's
think
fair.
one of the biggest problems is they waited until the cupboards were too bare to where it was almost no saving that defense. I mean, Zach Cunningham, I love that pickup. The year he came out, I said he's going to be the best linebacker in the draft. And that's when he was drafted after Reuben Foster and someone else, if I'm not mistaken. He's got okay speed, right? But so you got a rookie like that and playing next to Benardrick McKinney, with that duo, you need discipline. And who was it? Anthony Weaver that said, we need guys to keep gap integrity.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's get this straight. We're saying Zach Cunningham's fast, and he ran close to a 4.7, a 4.67. So, and he's our speed. Like, this
Correct.
is not trying to say that he's slow, but if you look at the Buccaneers that just won, they had two linebackers running in a 4.4.
Correct.
Like, it's just a different level of speed for today's NFL.
Yes.
And Cunningham was supposed to be our fast linebacker. Benardrick McKinney would have been, I've said it before, 15, 20 years ago, best linebacker in the league.
Yep.
The game's just changed too much for him. And the Texans didn't adjust. And I will give Caserio credit because I think part of the reason that JJ walked out or was let go, or the way that he wasn't just a favor to JJ. It was Caserio and the new coaching staff deciding that they're not going to allow him to freelance anymore. He's going to have to play a
Correct.
traditional position, or they would release him. And I'm sure that they had a conversation around that because Caserio comes from the Patriots, and they're not going to let somebody freelance the way that JJ did. And then Benardrick McKinney instantly recognizing that it's like, hey, yeah, he's a good run stopper. Yeah, he's good at shooting gaps, but he can't cover, and he leaves a great big hole in the middle of our defense for speedier teams to take advantage. And as a middle linebacker, or even a will linebacker in a Tampa 2, he can't do that. And they fixed that pretty quickly. Now, our defense can't be any worse than it was last year. So it's not too hard for me to say this, that it is almost going to be addition by subtraction, even though we got rid of talented guys, just because their talent, while still there, and they are not necessarily in the right situation, they could be quality players. They couldn't be quality players together on that defense.
Yeah, I mean the whole JJ Watt effect is going to make a good 30 for 30 documentary one day. I will say that. But who knows? Arizona might have been one of the only teams that are just like, you can do whatever you want. Come on. And maybe that's why he chose Arizona, because, a guy like Sean McDermott up in Buffalo, I've always heard that he's got a complex scheme, so they can't afford to have too much of that freelancing stuff up there.
Yeah, I believe that. And I think Arizona is probably the best team for JJ. I mean, that defensive line with Chandler Jones and him, like he'll get great numbers next year. I'm not going to say that he's going to have a great season, but he'll have great numbers.
Yeah. But with this defense and the way it's shaping up so far this year, right? Is there anyone that's still available that you wish they would bring in, like pass rush
No,
wise?
not really. We need more pieces. Like, I'm not saying that this defense is a finished product, but my thought on it is I do not like the Lovie Smith hire.
Really?
And I'm not big on it. Like, I think that they're trying to emulate a little bit of what Indianapolis did. When Indianapolis, they're probably the team that's closest to running at the Tampa 2, the type of zone defense that they ran with, and
Yeah.
Eberflus ran more zone than anybody else. But I think they're trying to emulate where if they bring in a zone heavy guy, they can take a roster that doesn't have a lot of talent and have them overperform. I
True.
think that's kind of maybe part of it, but I don't have faith in Smith. His last couple of spots, he has not done well. And I don't think he's magically going to do well in the NFL after struggling even in college. And I think that he's almost like he's a gap coach. Like he's there to hold, he's going to be replaced in 2
The
years.
whole staff almost will be.
Yeah. And what direction are they building the defense then? Like part of me is like, if they go all in on this 4-3 zone heavy defense, going heavy on a modified Tampa 2, and then 2 years from now, we have another coach that comes in that wants to go back to the 3-4, then we'll have turned over the roster twice. Where at this point, it's just look for guys that can play in any system and not spend too much money on them in case we do have to do another turnover.
Yeah, and looking at that staff, I don't see anyone that's on this staff defensively that would be able to come in and step right up for Lovey, because it definitely sure won't be his son.
Yeah, I mean, you can see on the offensive side of the ball almost what direction you would imagine that they're going to go, but defensively, nope. Like that defense doesn't look like it's going to be built upon. I could see offensively whatever they do being built upon, but on the defense, I have no idea what they're trying to do. I have no idea what they're trying to do with that staff. I don't know what they're trying to do with personnel. I don't understand why we signed literally every linebacker that was a tier 2 or a tier 3 linebacker.
Yeah.
Other than we just don't have any talent, but we signed all of them. So
Hey,
somebody's got to play.
Got to do it. I was Team Salah,
I was too.
But yeah, with the defensive coordinator spot, yeah, Lovey's probably not going to be the long-term hire. It's going to be tricky going forward because, like you said, is there another guy waiting in the wings? Are they going to find someone? Is someone going? Are they waiting for someone to become available? Because even offensively, I heard, I'm sure you did too, that it was Josh McCown is the next head coach in waiting, but I don't even think he's officially on the staff.
He's not. He's not on the Texans. They didn't sign him to a contract. They offered him, I think, but that was the rumor at least. And a lot of those things, let's also keep in mind, a lot of people are just making up bullshit.
Sure.
Like they don't know what's going on. You've got to actually look at the actions the Texans have taken. Obviously, Tim Kelly is there because Deshaun wanted him there, because they also brought in Pep Hamilton and paid him like an offensive coordinator. So I think that's kind of telling. Cully, I mean, based on his resume, in my opinion, I've said this on the podcast, so I'm sure people are tired of hearing it. Based on his resume, he deserves a shot. But he's, even with his age and with the Texans being in a kind of rebuild mode, he's not the long-term coach. So maybe it would go through the offense. I know that they've said that Tim Kelly, a lot of people view him as a future head coach. He's got to show a little bit more, in my opinion. Like the way he handled the running game last year didn't make any sense to me. You've got essentially you've got two cheat codes for our running game, and didn't make it go. So I would actually say that Pep Hamilton, Corey Murphy, actually he nailed it for me. I would say that if anybody's the head coach in waiting that is currently on the staff, my money would be on Pep Hamilton.
That's fair. I'm still banking on Joe Brady if his offense in Carolina kills it. I could see them poaching him.
There was the smoke that he was actually offered, but he wouldn't take the job without speaking to Deshaun. Deshaun refused to speak to him. I don't know how true that is, but I've actually had multiple people reach out to me and tell me that there was some substance to that.
I know potential head coaches would want to play with Deshaun, but I for me it would be more tempting to go to a place and get my guy. You know what I'm saying?
Right. No.
Because
This all happened because when this happened, it was right when everything blew up.
Yeah.
When Deshaun refused to talk to anybody. So Brady looked at it and said that it was a shit show and stayed away. But he was actually probably their number one candidate. And I can't bet that. I wouldn't report that as news. But I did have two people that kind of get these things right tell me that.
See, and that's why I get a little tricky, only because what if he came in and Deshaun can't grasp the concepts or the terminology? I would rather go to somewhere where I get to pick my guy.
Right. I'm with you. Like if the Texans reload on draft picks, when they trade Deshaun, they actually get fair value and get 4 to 6 draft picks or more. Then I think that the Texans next year or whenever they decide to move on from Culley are the most appealing place because you get that chance to literally build your roster how you want to.
Keaton Slavis from USC. Don't get enamored by Spencer Rattler. I'm telling you, look at that Keaton Slavis kid from USC. He took the job away from the kid that's in Georgia right now. I think his name is JT Mayfield.
Huh.
Yeah. He because Mayfield got hurt, but it's one of those cases like Slavis was just too good. So by time Mayfield, I think that's his name, JT Mayfield. By the time he came back, Slavis had already stolen the show.
Let's see.
Bring
Completion percentage. Wow. Okay. In 2019, he had a 71.9 completion percentage with an average target at 8.9 yards.
But see, and this is why I tell everyone you got to judge a quarterback by every year, because there are freak scenarios where a quarterback will throw like 68%, but then he's got a year where it's 53, and then it's a year where it's 62. It's too inconsistent.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. His number, I mean, I might have to watch some tape on him. Especially since we have to I was one of the last people that thought that Deshaun was going to be traded. I thought they were really going to play hardball with him. Because in the NFL, I would even use Aaron Rodgers as an example. Aaron Rodgers didn't get traded. And if he wanted to get traded and he didn't get traded, and he actually had the leverage that Deshaun wishes he had,
correct,
then Deshaun wasn't going to get traded.
And that's
I will actually say it, and I've said this multiple times, that all these accusations, like, that's actually opened the door for Deshaun being traded. And without the accusations, I don't think the Texans even consider it.
Well, and that's what has driven me nuts about this whole situation. I got 2 points I'm going to make for this, right? Deshaun has no stroke whatsoever, right? And if you look at him as a whole, the whole picture, he has not done anything a Texans quarterback before him has done. He's a loser in the playoffs, right? He's had a okay wild card game win. He wasn't supposed to win. He got lucky when he escaped that Buffalo. What was it? The 2 players that had him pancaked in the middle. That was just a freak play. But then getting pants in the second round, right? We've seen that before. What was it? With TJ Yates, we saw it. I know it sounds funny. And listen, I'm not trying to say that, TJ Yates was as good as Deshaun, but not for nothing. That's why I said I don't see it with Deshaun. The team is no better than they were when they had Hoyer and Mallett and Osweiler. It's been the same result.
I mean, I would say arguably, like, those rosters that they had around, like, TJ Yates, granted, he was the backup quarterback, and that roster was so loaded. If we had that same roster around Deshaun, like, we're not getting pants in the second round. Like, that roster was loaded.
But, it could have been another case because what was Deshaun's issue against Indy that one year? Was the same issue TJ Yates had against the Ravens, staring down his one receiver the whole time and kept trying to force the ball.
Yeah, and that was essentially. I mean, that was Deshaun's second season after he missed half the season to an ACL. And again, I'm not trying to disagree with you. I'm just saying that the ceiling with Deshaun was higher than any quarterback we've had. Now, based on what he actually did, you're right. He didn't do anything more than any other quarterback that the Texans have had. But the ceiling, and you could see it potentially happening, that's with Deshaun.
Yeah, and here's something that's going to hurt some people's feelings, right? Moving on from DeAndre Hopkins was one of the best moves the Texans made. Compensation, I won't argue that. Was it dumb? Sure. However, no team has ever won a Super Bowl after breaking the bank for a wide receiver. None ever in NFL history. You can look at it. Julio Jones, and every other wide receiver has gotten paid. They've never won a Super Bowl for their team. Even Terrell Owens, they've gotten close. But they always come up short. I'm not a fan of breaking the bank for wide receivers because even look at the year that Brady had Moss, Stallworth, and Wes Welker, right?
Or Welker, sorry, the other one. They're all the same.
They end up losing.
Welker, Edelman, they're all the same.
He was winning his first Super Bowls with scrubs. Deion Branch. I think wide receiver is probably the most overrated position in the NFL.
I'm actually, that is something else I do agree with you on. I have stated it before. You can't pay a wide receiver and expect to win the Super Bowl. Like, you can't have one on a top tier contract. It's never actually happened. However, the return on the Hopkins trade alone was fireable.
Well, yeah, I'm not arguing the compensation with that, but
it's understandable trading him. But at the time, he was our second most valuable asset. Getting that return was just awful.
I was told that Baltimore wanted him. O'Brien refused to send him there.
Oh, really?
They were offering something better. And I had this claim denied. I heard that the Eagles wanted him, but, Bill O'Brien had that pattern of wanted picks and at least one player. I heard a rumor that he wanted picks and Miles Sanders from the Eagles, and they got it down. But that rumor was shot down. But I've had people say, Baltimore wanted
I've heard
him.
the same.
O'Brien didn't want to keep him there.
I've heard the same thing about the Eagles, that Saunders was a non-starter. As soon as Bill O'Brien essentially insisted on it, the Eagles backed out. And I didn't. Maybe I heard the Baltimore one. But I can't think of it, so I don't think I did.
But see,
So that would be news to me.
that's where O'Brien was smart. You know, really overpay Laramie Tunsil? I don't think so, because look what you set the market, right? And if your competition has some of the best players, now they have to break the bank for them. Ronnie Stanley got $100 million. What was it? 5 years, 98, right? So now they're in a position to where they have to decide if they're going to pay Lamar. They probably will, right? So now that's where it gets iffy. You got to start, making cuts and cutting back certain spots. I give Bill O'Brien credit for when he was able to do that. Laramie Tunsil's not a scrub though either.
No, Tunsil. Again, we've talked about it. Like, Bill O'Brien had the right plan. He just didn't have a competent GM to carry it out.
Correct.
And if Bill O'Brien had Nick Caserio as his GM, and they were actually aligned with whatever that word was, alignment, then I think that team could have turned out to be something pretty good. But Bill O'Brien, right idea, didn't know how to execute it, and instead dug himself a hole.
Yeah,
here's the thing about the Tunsil trade. If we were actually a competing team, and those picks are in the late first round, late second round, half the belly aching about it doesn't matter. If we're in there competing, getting close to the AFC Championship game or in the AFC Championship game, then those picks at the end of the round, it's over. Like, nobody cares about that trade. But the fact that we were so bad with that trade is the problem.
One thing I'm a firm believer in is you pay whatever it takes to get your guy. Some people will think it's overpay. Like, you'll see someone like Rivers McCown, right? He'll say they overpaid and he boo-hoos at least once or twice a month about it. How many teams would give up an arm and a leg to have a left tackle at Laramie Tunsil's level?
Right. And
there's not
what I would say to that, though, is the results. Like, you have to overpay to get the players you want if you get the results. Like, that's ultimately what matters, is the results. And you don't know, and of course you don't know the results when you make the trade. But the results prove whether or not it's the right or the wrong trade.
But if Laramie say, all right, we'll just say any left tackle. Say you got the best left tackle in football. If he's doing his job, but the rest of the team is all scrubs and are going 3-13 every year, was it still bad to give up a lot for an elite left tackle? Because he's still doing his job.
Is it necessary to have an elite left tackle instead of 3 or 4 above average players?
I think
if the elite left tackle is the one player that you're missing that pushes you into elite team territory, absolutely worth it.
I think
if you are a trash team and your only good player is the elite left tackle, at that point, I don't think it's worth it.
Well, I think, Titus is going to fall into that good to above average right tackle. I'd hope he becomes an elite guy. But you look at the rest of the offensive line, there's still question marks, especially with who's it? I can't pronounce his name. Then the Haji Frazier guy, the guy they brought in from New England.
I'm sorry, who?
It's he's got a weird last name. I know they got 2 guys from New England. They're escaping me right now. The guy's last name starts with like FRHA. Hold on. They got Marcus Cannon.
Oh, the guard?
Yeah, Marcus Cannon is
what is his name? Like Fraught?
Yeah, Fraught. How do you think that's shaping up? Because you got some people think that Cannon's going to play right tackle. Howard's going
to Cannon's going to guard. They're going to they're going to have I think it was Texans Thoughts Jordan who put it out there with them doing the power run with Cannon at guard. Like, just massive guy. And I think that Sharping with the right offensive line coach, because, I mean, honestly, our offensive line coach was trash. So Sharping has shown flashes in the past
Correct.
of being a guy that could be good. Get the right coach, get him in the weight room. Then I think the interior of our offensive line, and I don't even know who's going to play center. I know that Justin Britt is the favorite, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of these other guys. Jalti Froholt,
Yeah, like I said,
6'5", 310. He's from Arkansas. Maybe he's only got 2 years of experience.
about
I
Lane
mean,
Taylor.
maybe.
Do you think he's a threat for the left guard position?
I honestly think it's Sharping's to lose. Like, he should be able to beat any of these guys out.
Sharping's got this weird thing about him to where he doesn't necessarily drive defenders. It's almost like he stands them straight up, and then that's it. There's no movement from him or them. It's a weird thing. Like it's like frozen in time. But yeah, I agree. If he got a little, probably in the weight room a little more, he might be able to start driving these defenders more.
Yeah. I mean, Lane Taylor, if he's intriguing. Like, there's some bodies. There are some bodies on the offensive line this year. Like, you have Cannon. Cannon's going to be the right guard. I think that if anywhere there's any competition, it's the left guard and center. But just the bodies that they have coming in, I think they're going to be better than they were last year. Like, they can't not be. Like, I will not be surprised if the Texans end up having a top 10, maybe between top 5 and top 10 offensive line. I don't think they're going to. I'm saying that as like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like, I don't think they're going to be in the top 5, but all the way up to the top 10, like in that range, I think they can actually pull that off. Like, they have the bodies to do it. And that's going to make whomever's throwing the ball look infinitely better. And
Yeah.
I mean, everybody trashes Brandon Cooks, but Brandon Cooks is still, I mean, he's not an elite tier receiver, but he's an above average, like Pro Bowl level receiver.
Yeah.
So the offense isn't going to be absolute horrid. I'm not saying it's going to be great, but it's not going to be the worst thing in the world. And our run game is going to be better unless the coach insists on David Johnson being a bell cow. But how could you when you got Lindsey behind him? I don't even know if Mark Ingram makes the roster, but Philip Lindsey has some serious talent.
I think they're going to backdoor into the playoffs.
No, really?
Yep. I think they're going to mess around and they're going to backdoor into playoffs. Maybe that last, give me the handout. I think they're going to accidentally end up in the playoffs. It's going to be the team version of that Todd Gurley play last year where they're like, don't score, and he falls into the end zone. I think that's what the Texans are going to do. They're just going to backdoor into the playoffs, and which I don't want to see them. I don't want to see them.
Y'all with your optimism, like everybody, like I am fully expecting the Texans.
That's not optimism, though. That's not optimism because the problem with that is when it comes to draft position, that's when you fall into like a weird range where it's like 15 to 25. I would rather them either draft in the top 10 or the bottom 5. That's why I said
somebody else agrees with you. Like, that would be the Texan thing to do. Like, everybody's writing them off. We're so sure they're going to get a top 5 pick, and then they're going to do some bullshit like end up in the playoffs.
And
so
listen,
fair.
That's the worst thing possible. That's the worst thing possible. It's either win a Super Bowl or you just got to be completely terrible to get the first pick. In my opinion, when your team's in this position, and that's why I said, because it's the Texans' way to where they need a high, like top 5 pick, they're going to blow it and they're going to backdoor into the playoffs.
When you put it like that,
that's the Texans' way.
Just because that's how Houston sports in general works. But if they're going to backdoor in the playoffs, do you think that we'll kind of end on this because we didn't really talk about him? We kind of glanced over him. Mr. Davis Mills, do you think what do you think about him? Let me just leave it out there. What do you think about him?
I think I think he can, as of right now, my thought is I see him as like a Ryan Fitzpatrick type to
He's got a
where
better arm than Fitzpatrick.
he
Way
can,
better arm than Fitzpatrick. Now, he doesn't
sure.
choose to use it
Well, I'm saying
enough,
that
but he
because
does have one.
I'm trying to set a low bar for him and not say, he's the second coming of Tom Brady. I think, but what I mean by Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think if he needs to come in and win you a few games, or even maybe like a TJ Yates, he can come in and I think he can at least, at the minimum, steer the ship. I think he's got a high ceiling, but at the minimum, he can at least steer the ship. If the Texans lose with Davis Mills at the helm, I'm going to say it's everything but Davis. Meaning a late game fumble, botch snap, a late pick six or something like that. I think it's going to be something out of his hands where maybe the secondary, gives up a big play late. But
Okay.
Keaton Slobbs, that's who I want, not Davis Mills.
Not Davis Mills. I got a fun fact for you.
Okay.
What did Davis Mills run in the 40?
What did he run the 40 in?
What did he run the 40 in?
Higher than most people think. I know that. I'm going to guess and say a 4.54.
4.58 is what they have listed on NFL.com. I think that they readjusted it to like a 4.7. Now here's
That's a
the
big
part.
adjustment.
Well, they always add like 0.2 of a second whenever it's hand timed to compare to laser time. But what did Deshaun run it in?
What was he I think that's one of the things that hurt his stock. He ran like something weird, like I will guess 4.57.
4.68.
4.68, yeah.
So I don't know. I just find it funny. Like that's one of the things that people keep bringing up. That Mills is slow.
Which goes back to
means
my Ryan Fitzpatrick comp.
It does.
Deceptive speed.
However, I would throw it out there that again, I don't think that Mills is he's a lottery ticket. Like he's not been drafted expected to be the top quarterback. He's not been drafted to be the starting quarterback, the next franchise quarterback. That's not why he was drafted in that position. Now, are they crossing their fingers and kind of hoping he turns into that? I think that there's a little bit of that. Like you want to hope that you have something. I mean, he's got the completion percentage. He just doesn't have enough games. He's got the depth of target. He just doesn't have enough games.
I tell you
he
what.
has the testing numbers, but then he has injuries. So he's a lottery ticket. That's what he is. And I think people need to chill on that.
Quincy and Deshaun do not want him to succeed. I tell you that right now. They do not want Davis Mills to be good or above good.
No, they definitely don't. I mean, I don't know if it really changes anything, but I think it's just interesting. He's an interesting prospect. However, it's people just manage your expectations with him. Like,
correct.
He's probably going to be, I almost say like a Matt Castle. Like I actually think that a Patriots Matt Castle, where he was drafted to be a backup quarterback and to be later moved for picks.
So you're saying the Texans are going to go 11-5?
Oh God.
You forgot about that year, or what was it?
Oh man, I did not forget about that year because he actually bumped his own draft stock up there. But I was about to say Hoyer because Hoyer was another one that did the same thing. They drafted him to trade him. But Hoyer, you say Hoyer in Houston, bad things happen, bad thoughts happen. So that's why I went with Castle. But he did have an 11-5 season. So who knows? Who knows? All right, Otto, let everybody know where they can find you. Let them know who you are.
You can find me on Twitter at Real Christopher R. Reeves Otto.
You got anything you want to promote?
Yeah, I got a soap company. I make natural handmade soap, everything from scratch. Company is called thomasreevesco.com. That's ThomasReeves.com. We're a veteran owned company as well, me and my partner. So we've known each other since we joined the military.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That is really awesome.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you so much for coming out here or coming on tonight, short notice, and just showing up and actually having a great conversation with no prep.
Absolutely. I tried,
No
man.
idea what we were going to talk about. And like, I thought it went really well.
My brain slips from time to time.
So did mine. I'm over here like trying to Google while talk. Yeah, it was interesting. But hey, awesome job, man. Appreciate you so much.
Awesome. Yeah.
I know you're coming on again in a couple of weeks and you're going to talk with James.
Yep.
I look forward to just listening to that one. I don't have to talk. I'm just going to listen.
I gotta prepare some notes. I feel like I almost gave away all my talking points for that night.
Well, I mean, James is a little bit more fire than me, so some of your things he may push back a little bit differently than I did, especially because I wasn't expecting to agree with a lot of the things you said. I'm like, I've made those points. I have recorded history on this. That's the one thing about having a podcast. But
That's right.
still, great conversation, man.
Thank you for having
Appreciate
me
you
on.
so much.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody in chat, thank you for hanging out. As always, couldn't do the show without y'all. And we will see y'all next week.